SJU. It is SJU on Fandom Entertainment. I am Danielle Radford. I've got with me Ed, Riley, and Dan.
Hello.
Who is going to get smaller and smaller as this goes.
We've reached critical mass here. The sinking chair.
The construction
stopped all pretense of ever being an actual chair. I thought I fixed it, but it turned out it was only if I stayed absolutely, completely still.
Which is nothing that we will ask of you during the show.
We have
sit
another
there
chair.
and don't breathe and don't speak and don't move in any way. You'll be fine.
We have another chair over there, but that chair,
That's
the
dangerous.
Chair part has completely detached from
So
the
it's
base.
like-
It's just sitting in a metal cup as I visibly sink some more.
It's very dangerous. Emmy nominated. We got this. We've got more chairs coming.
One more Emmy nomination and we get chairs.
Yes. One more.
Winners get chairs, guys.
Chairs are for closers.
All right, we've got some great stories today. We're going to be talking about that new Dolemite trailer starring Eddie Murphy, and that is via Netflix. We're also going to be answering some fan questions. But first, let's get into this. Netflix has released the trailer for their new movie, Dolemite Is My Name, starring Eddie Murphy. Academy Award nominee Eddie Murphy portrays real-life legend Rudy Ray Moore, a comedy and rap pioneer, true, who proved naysayers wrong when his hilarious, obscene, kung fu fighting alter ego Dolemite became a 1970s blaxploitation phenomenon. This is written by the team who did Ed Wood, The People vs. Larry Flint, The People vs. O.J. Simpson, and it is directed by Craig Brewer, who did Hustle and Flow. That would have been a different movie. And Black Snake Moan. Ooh, spicy takes. Spicy takes from the sinking chair. So I got to see the trailer yesterday. It was the only thing I wanted to talk about in the afternoon, and I did a lot. So we've all got to see the trailer. What were your first impressions?
I felt like one thing I really enjoyed is I know some Dynamite. I know some Dolemite, and I've heard all these things from all the original records. My mom used to have some of these records. I didn't have access to these records. I wasn't supposed to have access to these records. I wasn't supposed to be able to see any of this stuff, but I did. And then to hear it sampled later in the hip hop that I was growing up on, especially some of the West Coast stuff. They'd play some of his stuff in the background and draw inspiration from it and all that jazz. So I know what Dolemite sounds like. And what Rudy Ray Moore as a person sounds like. Mm-hmm. And I know what Eddie Murphy sounds like. And they're not quite the same thing. Eddie Murphy's not trying to do an impression of Dolemite. He's trying to act as Dolemite, and I think that's really cool.
Yeah, I think that's a much better, for one thing, Eddie, he does do impressions and other fun stuff, but I think considering how ridiculous Rudy Ray Moore already is as a person, and how ridiculous the story is going to be, and how ridiculous Dolemite was, at that point, if he started doing a straight-up impression, it's just an SNL sketch.
Yep.
Yeah, that's my issue in general with biopics, is that I think, I wish they would stop being so based on this person looks exactly like the person they're playing. It's no, it's still a movie, and it's still a dramatized portrayal of someone. So just make it a good movie with a good performance, and take on the essence of that person instead of just trying to sound exactly like them or look exactly like them.
Yes,
yeah.
A wig and teeth movie, as we
wig
called
and
them.
teeth.
Yes.
Yeah.
Bohemian Rhapsody was a wig and teeth movie. Rocket Man was a little bit of a wig and teeth movie. I thought there's a little bit more. Well, they're both good performances. I love both those performances. But yeah, this seems more like a. Now I don't know from Dolemite, honestly. It is a corner of cinema history that I am woefully undereducated about. I was looking at it just as, it's a new Eddie Murphy. Can you take me seriously at all doing this? Whatever.
Yes,
it's fine.
yes. No, I absolutely can.
I was looking at it
less than usual.
as Eddie Murphy movies now are somewhat few and far between after one of the most disastrous runs really of all time, the early part of this century. So I thought it was it seemed, I think it's kind of like what you were saying, Ed. It seemed like a combination of Eddie Murphy playing a character and Eddie Murphy playing into what he knows is his strength as an actor.
Yeah.
Which I think is smart, because sometimes the impersonation route works. Sometimes it doesn't. I think the big difference between Rami Malek's performance as Freddie Mercury and Taron Egerton's performance as Elton John is, and I thought they were both great performances, but Rami Malek was much more, I'm going to look and sound exactly like Freddie Mercury, and Taron Egerton I felt was a little bit more I'm going to embody this character, but at the same time I'm not worried about replicating his mannerisms exactly. And this felt to me like Eddie Murphy saying, I know what I am capable of as an actor and a performer, and I'm going to bring that to this part instead of just doing an imitation.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, it's super, super great.
And imitations can kill it. You know what I mean? The imitation game can kill it as a Ray. You know what I mean?
It can. No, I'm not casting aspersions.
No, I know you're not.
It's two different approaches.
Yeah.
Jamie Foxx's performance in Ray was great. He looked and sounded exactly like Ray Charles. Joaquin Phoenix's performance in Walk the Line, also great, where he was doing much more of a not imitating Johnny Cash, but playing that character. So both approaches can work.
Interesting too to think about, like in the case of both Walk the Line and then also like with Rocket Man, is that like in both cases, like Johnny Cash had already died. No, he was still alive. Because I remember June Carter Cash actually like personally approved Joaquin Phoenix to play Johnny, because she like made him take off his glasses and looked in his eyes, and she's like, you can be Johnny Cash. Like, so there is something to that, like the real life people picking the person who is playing them or whatever. Same thing with Elton John was a producer on Rocket Man. Like, he was involved, and like I think him giving the blessing to Taron to play him kind of freed Taron up a little bit to be able to go like, okay, well, I'm kind of doing my own thing with this because the guy who I'm portraying is okay with me doing this. Now, that could also be the case of some other stuff too, but I think that might be part of why that works so well. Yeah. Whereas like Freddie wasn't around to approve Rami Malek's performance of him. So
right. Well, and in this case, Rudy Ray Moore did pass away in 2008, and so he wasn't able to approve of this either.
Yeah.
But it's also, I mean, it's Eddie Murphy. His family's gonna say yes.
Yeah.
There's no way that Eddie Murphy comes up to you and says, "I want to do the Dolemite movie," and you're not like, "Yes, please. Where do I sign and how often?"
Well, and hopefully whoever would be advising them, if they're not doing that from if they're just chilling out being regular people, not knowing about all this jazz, and then somebody brings this to them, I would think that if they're being advised, it'd be a selling point that like the people behind like Ed Wood and real brilliant biopics, or however you say that word. I say biopic.
I say biopic.
Yeah, let's fight. Let's do the
movie fight.
Tie our wrists together. We'll jab the air. No.
Yeah, well, I mean, Ed Wood's a great example because I think it's I think it might be my favorite biopic ever made, and it's not 100% accurate. It's just very much in the style of his movies.
And the spirit.
They made a movie about him that looks and sounds like a movie he made, and I think that's probably what they're going for with this too, which I think is brilliant and genius. I remember like those guys being involved is a big reason why I'm excited for this, because I think that they're in general they just nail it across the board.
Yeah, absolutely. And so I'll just go ahead. Let's just ask Ed a question very quickly while you do this, so we can just have this on the thing. Dan did recently. He mentioned that Eddie Murphy has had
these dang SJWs done made the white man smaller.
They were right this whole time. They've been yelling at me for years about this.
Also, in case we have been talking about it, there has been construction, so we shouldn't hear any of it because they usually give us a good solid window in between breaking the walls, like Kool-Aid Man.
No coincidence that the only white guy on the panel is the one being literally diminished.
Should we get the construction guys to come fix your chair?
Can they? Or just like set up some cinder blocks for me to sit on? Cinder blocks are
sit on the cushion.
The cushion is like this big, and I'm putting this marble on the table.
Take one of the cushions. All the couch ones will come off. Never mind.
They don't make.
Oh, the big ones do. But I don't want to subject you to then also the cushion like everything else.
And you're like surfing.
When you're on the end of the row like that.
Dan Short Round Murrell.
But yeah, so Dan, you did mention that he had a really not great run during the 2000s.
You guys you guys taking down I Am Dave or Meet Dave, whatever it was called.
Meet Dave.
That movie that was so recognizable that was why you got the name
and
of
even down to the comeback with Dreamgirls that was then, according to some folks, torpedoed by Norbit.
Yeah.
Which some people have said, because if you don't know, Eddie Murphy was the front runner to win the Oscar for Dreamgirls, which I thought was a great performance. And then around the same time as voting was happening for the Academy Awards, he had another movie, Norbit, where he plays many roles, but one of them is very prominently featured as a woman in a very large prosthetic suit all around town. And there are some who speculate that perhaps Oscar voters looked at those ads and said, like, we cannot give that an Oscar.
Yeah, we're not putting Norbit up.
We can't put Norbit up there, which is ridiculous. But at the same time, that was even the big comeback ended up being. I believe Alan Arkin was somewhat of a surprise winner that year. Yeah. So it's like even the successes, I think, for Eddie Murphy have been tinged with a little bit of disappointment. So I'm rooting for a comeback, and I know that there's a lot of people that have been revisiting his work and his legacy, and I think those are discussions to be had, but he's also a phenomenally talented performer.
Yes.
And I would love to see him make that name for a new generation. So sorry.
That was so professional, though, through the whole ordeal.
You were such a
like
pro,
it's like a Larry
Well
Sanders
done.
plot happening right now in the middle of the show.
I know.
You know.
You know what it is? It's you you're DiCaprio continuing the scene, even though you've cut your hand with the letter open.
Doing a Django.
I'm just going to keep going.
But so this was so Dreamgirls was a big comeback for him as well, but he also wound up having a comeback with Nutty Professor after he'd done a couple of movies that hadn't hit. So other than obviously in Norbit and other things like that, what went wrong with the career choices that he was making?
Well, personally, I think I was there for Eddie Murphy's whole career in some way, shape, or form. When I was a little kid, I got a tape of Beverly Hills Cop. And I let my tape rock till my tape popped. You know what I mean? I watched that thing so much.
Eddie was fine. Sorry.
Hey, get it in, girl. He was great, and 48 Hours, the new sheriff in town, all that. It was just like really seminal stuff. But I think when somebody is an actual Marvel, it's hard to wield all that. Like there's people with a smoldering intensity. Oh, great, Steve McQueen, stand over there, do your thing. I'm not trying to diminish his career, but he's not. I don't think he was a complicated instrument.
Right.
I don't think it was so much going on. There was this specific thing going on. Even with somebody like and like Brando. Brando's talent was so immense. Look how many horrible choices he made. You know what I mean? LeBron James has played for 3 or 4 teams. You know what I mean? Wilt Chamberlain got traded. These people who are giants in their field,
right.
It's hard to determine the right thing to do. And they get their coaches fired. In this case, they get their directors and screenwriters maligned. And sometimes they make terrible choices because they're such a marvel.
Well, and keeping in mind, too, I think Eddie Murphy was 19 when he got cast on Saturday Night Live. Almost immediately, was the unquestioned star of that show. It was in an era where the show was in a transitional time, was not doing well, had lost the not ready for the original cast. And Eddie Murphy became the anchor of that show. I mean, he carried all of the memorable characters. I mean, you had Joe Piscopo, you had other talented, but like he became the breakout star of that show. 19. He's doing Beverly Hills Cop in 48 Hours and all these movies at like 22, 23, 24, 25 years old. So this idea that, you should be able to navigate fame and understand success when you literally your entire adult life you've been a megastar and how to transition and become older. Like, I'm not to defend, all of his choices. He did some objectively terrible movies, but at the same time, it's like there's no roadmap.
Swings too, like Metro.
And like Pluto Nash was a huge like swing that also like completely just like one thing I think about Eddie Murphy is that, and I may be wrong about this, but my feeling on Eddie Murphy is that Eddie was always as a star in his own movies back in the 80s when he was like at the top of his game, he was like the most extraordinary thing in the movie. Like when you watch Coming to America, like there's funny characters and they have funny lines, but they're all very grounded in reality, and Akeem is like the weird guy coming from Africa and like has these like cultural things that break apart. And I think that when you look at that, like like the chains and everything like that, and like trying to fit into working at a fast food restaurant. But then you look at his like late 90s, early 2000s, like his like era of flops, when he like shifted into trying to do this family-friendly movie era of his. First of all, I don't think that his fans were looking for family-friendly Eddie Murphy. I think that's one thing, and it was like he was like exclusively doing it for a long time. But also, aside from Shrek, where he's a voice, a lot of the stuff, it's like almost like the world became too big for Eddie Murphy to be the standout funny thing in the movie. Like he's not Beverly Hills Cop anymore. He's Dr. Dolittle, and all the animals are wacky and silly. And in Norbit, amongst all the other problems, like he's too many of the characters. I think that's also one of the problems with Nutty Professor 2, is that suddenly it's not just like this one weird, like two pairs of guys, a couple scenes of the family, but in a real world, like the whole world around him becomes wacky. Same problem with Pluto Nash. The world is so outlandish that like Eddie Murphy gets diminished a little bit.
Yeah, well, and I think that's also because family friendly and coming in and doing the Nutty Professor 1, that was one of the things that wound up being one of his career bounce backs. Because remember, in the like the early 90s, he started doing stuff that seemed like it was really personal to him. You know, he did a Harlem Nights, which did not do very well. He did Boomerang, which is a movie that I love, but it is a movie that is all about how suave and cool and hot Eddie Murphy is. And that is not the Eddie Murphy that I think most people were ready for. We like funny Eddie Murphy, and you can say he can get it, but to base a whole character around like, I am the coolest person in New York, and I work at this makeup company, and you know, I do perfume, and I'm this Lothario. Most people did not wind up buying it. He did The Distinguished Gentleman, which was kind of a fun political thing, but also maybe not necessarily an Eddie Murphy hit. And then, he did the song with Michael Jackson, "What's Up With You," and it's weird to consider that to be part of like his career choices, but that song was everywhere. I do believe that was during the time when every Michael Jackson song would premiere like on a
MTV
TV.
had a special hour-long special retrospective for every Michael Jackson video had a
It had like a short film made attached to it. Yeah,
like it was a super huge deal. And you know, Eddie has always wanted to do music, and he's tried it on several occasions, and that's one thing where he always works with these very talented people, but the songs just don't work for Eddie.
But
He tried to do reggae with...
Never forget, party all the time. Party all the time. My girl likes to party all the time.
All the time?
All the time.
All the time.
And I do think that like that like broad comedy era of his was right at a time when audiences were turning away from broad comedies. I feel like that was right around the time we were seeing the rise of the more like hearts, like the Apatow era of comedies.
Yeah.
And I think like there was an era where all the really big high concept studio comedies like Land of the Lost and stuff like that were flopping, and that's right when Eddie Murphy was like trying to hit all those buttons.
Which is a bummer because Bowfinger is right in the middle of that.
Yeah,
Bowfinger's good. Well, and Dr.
good.
Dolittle was a hit. It wasn't critically well regarded, but it was a hit. The first Nutty Professor was a hit. I think even Nutty Professor 2 financially was
did well.
successful, not to the degree I don't think of the first one, but yeah, it's the mixing ins of the holy mans of the world.
Yeah.
Although he probably made so
vampire
much
in
money off
Brooklyn.
of Shrek.
Bowfinger was not a super big hit, but it was one of those ones that like lingered and has like a cult following now. And I think it's fantastic.
We're in love with Bowfinger.
I was in love with Bowfinger. I think it might be the last Eddie Murphy movie and Steve Martin movie that I was like truly in love with.
Yeah.
Like I watched that one, especially because I was like young, wannabe Hollywood like I wanted to make movies and stuff like that. So for me, it was like this perfect like. It was like live. It was like Human Muppets. Like it was like a movie about like it was like the Muppet Show. Like it's like the wacky animals trying to put this movie together, but it was like people doing it.
Yeah.
It was great.
Yeah. So what is it? We've talked about, obviously, he's had like several career like bumps, and then he's had career resurgences. What is it about Eddie Murphy that makes him such a star?
I think it's charisma. I think he
Yeah.
just has that star power where you can't not enjoy him in some way. And like and as somone who just like a lot of his older stuff doesn't hold up as well for me, like the specials and stuff. But Coming to America was like one of the first movies that I remember as a kid just adoring, and to this day I can't turn it off. It comes on, and I'm like super scared about the sequel because I feel like comedy sequels, especially long delayed comedy sequels, don't have a great track record.
No.
And I'm real scared. But the first Coming to America is one of the most genius films ever made. Like, it's just perfect.
It is my favorite movie. I think I've told this anecdote here before. It is one of my Oma's favorite movies because my Oma loves any movie where there's drag. She just loves any of them. I don't know why. She's German. It's fine. One day we were having my other German relatives come visit us in Hawaii, and she's trying to explain why she loves this movie, and all I hear is like a bunch of words in German that I don't know, and it ends with the classic line, "The royal is clean, your highness." So it was, "The royal is clean, your highness," and like they're joking and laughing about it, and it's like this memory that will never leave me from my childhood.
Oh, as a child, like my brother and I thought it was hilarious to go, "Wipers?" and like clap our hands like that. Like, we thought it was the funniest thing in the world.
And the thing, I think what's missed on a lot of people is a lot of the things that we don't, that America doesn't seem to like about Eddie Murphy, like his propensity to want to play all the damn roles and do some of this super low humor when you know that he's capable of being such a super great actor all the time. When he's got that Robin Williams gene of like, oh, give me some serious stuff to say. We're gonna get serious, and you're gonna believe me. But I'm also the funniest person ever. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That's really rare in people, and I don't think people really understand. Again, I don't think people understand. Everybody thinks they know what they do if they put on the Infinity Glove. You know what I'm saying? Where if they had put on Thanos' glove in the Infinity Gauntlet, they know what they're gonna do. But wait until you have it on your hand.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And he's had it on his hand since he was 19, like Dan was talking about. So it's really hard. His instrument it's a tuba, it's a flute, it's a bassoon, it's other things that aren't woodwinds or whatever, brasses. It's pianos. He's got all the strings. He's got all the instruments. And it's hard to think, okay, what am I going to play with all these damn instruments? I got I got this whole thing. So I think he's done pretty well for somebody so talented. As Kanye used to say, I'm doing pretty good as far as genius go. I think he is, and I think we give him a lot of crap the same way as I said earlier about certain sports stars. They're so talented that no matter what they do, it's not good enough. You ain't got enough championship rings. Oh damn.
Well, and it doesn't help that like he does have that it quality that is somehow really undefinable where it's a charisma, it's a way that he carries himself, and because he makes it look so easy when it's good, when it's bad, we can't let him, he doesn't get the same opportunity I think to fail as a lot of other people do because he spent so much time being on top. It's a thing that we've talked about when I talk about the Wild Wild West movie. I'll get there, I promise.
When I talk about it.
I always love that topic of conversation.
But when I talk about the Wild Wild West movie, a huge part of the reason why it is so maligned and why people hated it so much is because it was coming off of both of these two people, the director and the star, having such a huge wave in that decade. And if it wouldn't have been for the fact that you have these two powerhouses coming together to make this movie, I think it doesn't do well. I think maybe it flops. I don't think it becomes like the worst of all time on movie lists.
Yeah. I was thinking it's something smart. It's about to be smart. Check it out.
You're so smart.
This is the reason why we're weird about Eddie Murphy, because his misses remind us of how hard all of that is to do. How hard it is to make a hit for even the most talented person with the best backing, with the biggest budgets and the biggest everything. It's still hard. People like that remind us of that. Those big misses you just said. Will Smith, he was just in the movie with the aliens, and now I don't like him with the spiders. My brain can't compute what happened. You know what I mean? They elucidate how hard it is to have a hit anything. And they remind us of that, and we don't like that. It's like reminding us of our mortality or something.
I was just thinking, too, that I don't think we have an era anymore where we really have, like, a comedy star who does like 2 comedies a year or at least 1 a year, and you're like looking forward to the next. Like, who is that person now? We don't have someone.
Jim Carrey for a while,
but that was like late. That was like mid to late 90s. Like that was like I think Ben Stiller might be the last one that we had of that, and even that's been a while.
Maybe. Will, why can't I think of his name?
Will Ferrell?
Maybe Will Ferrell.
But even Will Ferrell, like, always seemed to have like ensemble things happening. It was like Will Ferrell and these other people. But I guess Will Ferrell and it's like Steve Carell.
He was
to some degree.
Pop,
But they all also like all they want to do are serious movies now, and they're like same thing with like they all kind of like moved away quickly from it. But I'm trying to think of now
Seth
like
Rogen,
in the last
kind of a little bit now. I think Seth Rogen has a brand that people look for, but it's not. But it's not the same. I mean, it's not like Robin Williams and Eddie Murphy and Jim Carrey were at a certain time because everything A is so fractured and B it's just we're not as big of a star economy.
Yeah, and even Rogen's is like he and his team make these movies like as a team. It's like he's a producer, he's a writer on it. He's like doing his own projects as opposed to like being like all these studios, all these directors want to work with this one actor and make it. Yeah,
and everybody's got a team, but all teams aren't. All teams aren't supported by the infrastructure of Hollywood equally. How about that?
That's very true.
No matter how big a star you are. How about that? But yes, also, some of the times, I think the last 10 years or so, I think he's been able to choose whatever he wants to do. And I think that it's no coincidence that some of these are better things.
Yeah.
But then that last movie, though, that Radic movie, dude, I don't know that I like that one.
Really, with Eddie Murphy, I'm so sorry. This is really annoying. Is also the string of bad ones. Because if you look at, and I mean, largely because he's gone, but if you look at, I think Eddie Murphy's cast counterpart in the 80s was Robin Williams.
Right.
The same kind of manic energy. They both were huge comedy stars, but Robin Williams made just as many. I mean, he did that. What was that Harold Ramis movie with the vacation rental or what, Summers, whatever,
and like Millennial Man,
and Toys, and like he did plenty of movies that were not well received, that didn't do well financially. It's just that he didn't do them all in a row. And I feel like with Eddie Murphy, he did them all in a row, like within a few years, and that just really. Plus, he just didn't seem as interested in working anymore.
Like let's look at his first kind of. It was Harlem Nights, Another 48 Hours, which most people did not like, Boomerang, Distinguished Gentleman, Beverly Hills Cop 3, Vampire in Brooklyn, and then we get Nutty Professor.
That's a resurgence. He comes back,
and then we get to Mulan, which was great, Dr. Dolittle, Holy Man, Life, which a lot of people just did not like and did not get, The Nutty Professor 2, and then Shrek, which is a little one, and then PJs, which was great, it was a TV show, and then Pluto Nash, I Spy, Daddy Daycare, Haunted Mansion.
Yeah.
And it doesn't
None of
help.
those are movies that seem like they would be bad choices if you were being offered them. Like, I mean, Pluto Nash was one he was trying to get made for a long time, and I want to say, I don't think it's as bad as it gets trashed for being. I think it gets remembered poorly because it's one of Eddie Murphy's like flop movies.
Right.
Huge
It's not
flop.
great.
Well, it's Heaven's
but it's
Gate-esque.
enjoyable. I mean, I watched it. I watched it on HBO, so I had like no investment in it. But I remember like watching it. There's some funny stuff in this movie, and it has moments. I think it's just one. Also, I think unfortunately, a lot of his movies are ones that were destroyed by committee notes, and you can definitely tell the movies were like reworked and rewritten, same way Wild Wild West was, where it's like too many voices contributed to this high budget thing and ruined it for what it probably could have been if it had just been whatever script he agreed to originally.
Yeah.
Right. Well, and you did mention earlier that they are doing the Coming to America sequel. It features almost the entire cast of the original '88 film, returning alongside Murphy, plus Wesley Snipes is going to be in there. It's directed by Craig Brewer, who again is the one who did Dolemite Is My Name, and so. Do we think that this is going to be a hit nostalgia sequel? Do we think it has a chance to be good?
Yeah, I mean, every movie has a chance to be good.
That's true.
I mean, Craig Brewer sidling up in this fashion is so funny. It's nice. You know what I mean? Because he's always seemed to like the culture, as it were, and now he's sidled up to one of the biggest former stars. So maybe he can. That's all I had to say about that. Yeah. This mid to late career sidle for Brewer is funny to me.
Yeah, I'm withholding judgment. I'm anxious about it. I'm very cautiously nervous about it as a concept because, like I said, in general, I don't think comedy should have sequels. I think almost no comedy sequel is as good as the original. There's very rare cases where it happens, but I think that generally, the original is, especially when it's like a perfect comedy, like Coming to America, I'm like, ooh. But with this much time in between it, and with the talent that's kind of coming into it, I do wonder, maybe they had a really solid reason for why this was the time to bring it back. Like, this is why we're finally doing this. So if they all read this script, and this script is really funny, and there's a reason why to do it, and it's not like it's not super relevant right now with our time, so it might actually be something that could be fun to watch. So I love the original enough that I will give the sequel a chance, but I'm so scared of it because I love the original so much.
I think it's mostly just the son thing. That's the one that's got me a little bit because it's going to be that he had a kid in New York who doesn't know that he's royalty, and so he has to come to America to meet the kid. But again, anything can be good if it's well executed.
Right. It's all about execution.
Yeah.
Some of the best movies of all time are stupid premises, but the execution's good.
Yeah.
So
let's go out and fist fight this shark in the middle of the ocean with our radio broke. That's a really great movie.
This is a space adventure with a walking rug and a lady with buns for heads and a guy in a black rubber suit.
That's why whenever someone makes fun of Jupiter Ascending to me and they're like, oh, this guy's like a half dog, I'm like, look at Star Wars, you can say the exact same things about that movie. I'm not saying that they're equal in quality.
Jupiter Ascending, the bees. Jupiter Ascending had a few extra layers to it.
I don't think the bees thing doesn't bother me as much as anybody else. I can spend a whole SJU on screen on Jupiter Ascending, so I won't make you guys do that.
The sky ice skates.
Okay, the sky skates are where I had to jump off.
I was into
down
it.
with everything.
Look,
I played too much Final Fantasy for sky skating.
it's not that weird. I've done weirder.
Maybe I'm not as into fantasy. That may be part of it. Is I'm not
Sorry, I didn't
both
mean to
feet
throw
into
that
the fantasy
digression in
world.
there.
No. It's I get it.
My point was kind of going along what you were saying is whenever you break a movie down to the most ridiculous things about it,
Yes.
you can destroy almost any fantasy movie with that. It's like,
Definitely.
but that's why we go to see fun fantasy movies. Like yeah, if you told me like 10 years ago that if without any knowledge of Marvel, and you were like, yeah, the biggest hit movie in the universe is going to be about a guy who has a magic glove that he snaps his fingers and kills half the population. Like, wait, what? Like that a guy who collects 5 pieces of jewelry and changes the entire universe, and he's purple, and then what? And then they're gonna go back in time. Like, what are you talking about? Like, it'll be crazy.
Yeah.
Like,
It's like when they introduced Guardians, and we were all like, "Rocket Raccoon, okay."
I was always excited for Guardian. I'm the one. Like, I will.
it was you.
I will be the one. Yeah, I was like, no, you guys. Everyone was like, this is gonna be the first flop. I'm like, it's gonna be amazing, and it was. So.
Yeah.
All right, so what are your favorite Eddie Murphy films? We've mentioned Coming to America a lot because that's obviously a really amazing one. I am in the minority. I love Boomerang. I think it's because it's one of those ones where it was always on TV.
Yeah.
It was always on TV. It had Eartha Kitt being old and pervy. I don't know. It's not great, but it was always one of my favorites. I also... Man, I'm giving myself away here. I liked Vampire in Brooklyn because it's awful.
I knew it was coming.
It's fine. You know me.
I know
it's
coming.
terrible. It's awful. He has to dance with her to make him fall in love with her. It's garbage.
But look what it's got in it.
Fun garbage.
It's got vintage. I'm talking about vintage. Well, she stays vintage forever because she's a vampire, a beautiful one, Angela Bassett.
Mm-hmm.
Angela Bassett is vintage Angela Bassett if that thing exists at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's got great wig work.
It does have great wig
It's
work.
got that widow's peak. Man, Eddie Munster is a sex symbol. Am I wrong? But yeah, so basically, that is a funny movie. But like for real, don't give Boomerang short shrift. I think it's one of the first movies to try to take on. In a smart way, that goofy Lothario persona.
Yes, because it's a breaking down of that, and I think a lot of people didn't get that.
Right, and try to break that down, and some of the asides for the culture with Martin Lawrence, the pool scene, where it's about the white ball, knock all the colored balls off the plane. You know what I mean? And that's the Earth. The green on the felt of the table is the Earth. That resonated with a lot of kids.
The original Hotep.
Yeah, original Hotep. You know what I mean? See, that's what I'm talking about. An original person who's trying to have knowledge of self, but doing it in this funny, goofy way in this movie that has all these other sexual politics going on. So, I mean, Reginald Hudlin, who I kind of personally know, so maybe I'm shilling for him. I don't know.
Shill.
But he directed the hell out of that movie, and I think it was probably at least 7 years before its time.
Possibly.
I think for me, as far as the characters issues go, and the movie itself, I think is often. It reminds me a little bit of the I Now Pronounce You Chuck and Larry with Adam Sandler, which tried to be like, this is cool, but also like gross, guys kissing.
Yeah.
I feel like the first Nutty Professor movie pulled against the message it was also trying to push to engender sympathy with the character, but from a character standpoint, and I think because of Nutty Professor 2 and because of Big Mama's House and because of like even Tropic Thunder and Jeff Portnoy and the fatties fart too. I feel like that has shaped how a lot of people think of the first Nutty Professor movie. But
even 30 Rock,
even 30 Rock. But like from a character perspective, like the character of Sherman Klump is not just some like bumbling oaf. Like, he gives that character real sadness and pathos and you feel for him, like the scene in the comedy club with Dave Chappelle. Like you feel for him, and then the character work as the different members of the family. I just feel like because of a lot of the broader jokes of the movie that maybe have not aged as well, and B, the fact that trope was then taken and run with and parodied, that people clump Nutty Professor with a lot of other films, but I will stand by.
That Buddy Love scene at the comedy club is viscerally, like, I remember as a kid, like, that's someone got picked on a lot, having that fantasy fulfillment of, like, going back to the club as the coolest person in the world and just destroying the comedian. Like, it was the funniest thing. It was so great to watch.
Yeah, I just feel like he was really, and even the scene where he's transforming and he's going back and forth between Klump and Buddy Love and just like, and I mean, visually there's visual effects help with it, but from an acting perspective, that's all Eddie Murphy.
Right.
Yeah. And I feel like just as far as like the range and the scope and the breadth of what Eddie Murphy is capable of doing different kinds of character work, it's all there in that movie. It's just that it's couched in a lot of other things that are just like, okay, but parts of it are still, I think, hilarious.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
absolutely hilarious.
Well, I ranted about Bowfinger already, so like I mean, but I think that one is it's so rare for a movie too with like two huge comedic icons to be together in the movie and have it work. But he does such a great job of it, and he plays in similar to Nutty Professor. It's one of the few Nutty Professor and Coming to America and Bowfinger are the only ones I really like where he plays multiple roles, and I think the reason why it works so well in Bowfinger is because it's so based on his own physicality and not in makeup. It's not a mustache and hat movie. It's just him doing his own. It's just like there's a couple things with the teeth and stuff like that, but for the most part, he really does make Kit and Jiff like very different from each other, and like so it's really fun to see him switch between them. And I like how ridiculous he's willing to make himself look, even as Kit's the star. Yeah, Kit, like when he's like the member of that cult or whatever, and like the whole weird plot line where he likes to like expose himself to Laker girls, like that's like a thing he regularly does, and like that's a. But also, we haven't even mentioned Trading Places at all in this conversation.
Right.
I don't know how we've done that, but because that's funny because normally I'm the one defending Coming to America as being better than Trading Places, and other people want to fight me on Trading Places being the better of the two. But it is just a genius movie, and it's just.
And it shows you how he plays well with others. We've seen so many
Has that
later. We've so
Again,
Oh my God.
there are a lot of elements to address in every movie. It's
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe not.
Maybe I don't bring up Trading Places. Maybe I let it go.
Trading Places is great, but there's look, you go back
nuance
and
is a thing that exists in this world.
you go back and watch any 80s movie, and there's gonna be parts where you're gonna be like, I can't believe that was in
All I
every
know
one.
is that as a kid, when the brothers from Trading Places showed up again and Coming to America,
Yes.
my brother and I lost our minds. Like that was the most.
Yeah.
And we're like, are they gonna make a sequel, Trading Places? Are they gonna come back?
And that's the Eddie verse. People talk so much about the damn supposed Tarantino verse.
Yeah.
There's an Eddie verse, and those dudes came up again.
Yeah.
because they paid their.
Oh, it's such like we were like kids like those guys they're in this movie and they were in that movie and they're in this movie too. Like it's like the craziest thing in the world.
And both of them ate their vegetables between the movies because they were still alive.
Yeah.
Everybody ate their veggies. Not me, but them. But yeah, I love the whole Eddie Murphy oeuvre. I really am such a super fan that I love Trading Places, but it's kind of like that's kind of a two-hander. You know what I mean? Because they give each of them equal, which they should because that movie is a two-hander. But I got a real soft spot for Beverly Hills Cop, not because it's his very first super hit or any of that stuff. It to me symbolized this sort of I'm not supposed to be here. I'm not the class wise, personality wise, this wise, that wise. I'm not supposed to be here, but I'm Bugs Bunny. You can't beat the kid.
Yeah.
The way that I am will be borne out as the way you got to be to really get stuff done. And I love that it's one of the first times that in Hollywood history, I think that they've went that far afield of who they originally wanted to cast. Besides maybe Die Hard was originally for Frank Sinatra. That's a famous story, the original thing. And Sylvester Stallone spent years developing Beverly Hills Cop into a giant actioner where he shot everybody and threw everybody out windows and beat the hell out of everybody. And it ended up being one of the funniest movies of all time with one of the greatest skinny-ass black comedic performers. And he played the whole thing different. The whole story.
Is that why we got
different.
Brigitte Nielsen in part 2?
Maybe.
Contractually obligated. I would have loved to have seen, though, Sylvester Stallone do the Beverly Hills Cop, but the verbatim as Eddie Murphy.
Oh my God.
Police brutality. It's just Sly. I don't know if this is. No, it's great. I'm gonna do it.
Tell Victor Maitland he got herpes simplex 10.
If I could, Rick and Morty. Portal gun into that universe.
Oh no!
With the verbatim Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah.
That's always
Sly,
like
this joke doesn't make sense. Hey, it's right there on the page.
And just some of the physical gags, like when Axel Foley pulls his crappy car up to the hotel and he gets out and it starts rolling and he has to jump in and get it back. Sylvester Stallone doing that at peak Stallone. I'm talking about half shirts running on the beach.
Yeah.
Stallone doing that. That'd be hilarious.
I want the banana in the tailpipe.
Yep.
I want the last action hero moment moment but it's Eddie Murphy's universe, and he walks into a Blockbuster and you see Beverly Hills Cop just alone in the poster.
Yeah, that'd be hilarious.
Everything about it. Now I also want to see the Frank Sinatra universe version of Die Hard, where it's still the same exact script.
And he's crawling over glass.
Yeah.
That is one of those weird things of just like Hollywood is such a labyrinth when you sign a contract for something, because that was they'd optioned that book, and part of the option was like, if you make this novel, you have to contractually offer the role to Frank Sinatra. So what if he said yes? Come out to the coast, thank you. Hey, yippee-ki-yay, ring-a-ding-ding.
Ring-a-ding-ding.
Yeah, that would have been pretty crazy.
I want to see it. All right, so we thank you for watching SJU on Fandom Entertainment. Make sure to like and subscribe. Hit the bell. We don't have the bell. Great stuff on Fandom.com. We've got our Fandom Uncovered Dungeons and Dragons that is out. That has been doing. I'm so happy. All of you have been so pleased with it, because it was great for us to get to make, and it's great to get to shine a light on some of the fandoms that maybe not everyone is as familiar with. So please continue to share that with your friends if it means something to you, and to let us know if it means something to you. All right, so we're very quickly going to get to one fan question before we go ahead and wrap it up. Kate Willoughby asks, if you could be on a movie set, either a fly on the wall, working on it, etc., of any film ever made, which one would it be and why?
Ooh, that's really good.
I just stumped the whole table. Well done, Kate.
Well, I mean, I've said Star Wars before, I think, when I've been asked this, just because I'm fascinated by the concept of somebody working on a cultural touchstone that they don't know is the cultural touchstone, and just the stories of just like Harrison Ford going up to George Lucas and just being like, "What is this shit? I can't say this." And you know, Alec Guinness just not digging what was going on. It's like, what is this movie? I don't understand. And just the idea of seeing, Peter Mayhew, R.I.P., walking around in this Chewbacca outfit and just the 70s happening at the same time with that cast. It just. I think it's so amazing to be a fly on the wall and to see like them shooting these iconic scenes and having no clue that anything that they're doing is going to work.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy. So I think that would be a really unique experience to just be able to witness this insanity happening and you realizing what it would become.
That's a really good one. Ed?
That's tough. Can you come back to me?
Yes.
No. Because the one problem is it's hard to say even like one of the Avengers movies, because half the action scenes are done on computers now anyway.
That's what I was thinking about. That's
out in a room like,
stuff,
oh, look at this computer room. That sounds like fun.
Yeah, you might have like a half a second of fun watching like, Sean Gunn on his like crawling around on something or making fun of the Thanos on someone's head.
Well, I thought about
what
the
I'm gonna
Matrix,
say?
and I thought about how much green screen and like, oh, they set up a bunch of cameras. Look, they're all in a ring.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, I don't know how fun that would be. Some of the kung fu would be super fun, but you wouldn't be guaranteed to be there for all the kung fu days.
I'm going to say Shaun of the Dead.
Ooh, that's
because like when I see the photos from that set and like imagining them trying to make this zombie landscape with like little budget at all, that part of it will be really cool because it's such a love letter to the genre of film. But also, like, I think that would just been a really, really fun set to be on. Like, I feel like it would have been hilarious in between takes. It would like watching them try different things out, and also it's similar to the Star Wars thing on a smaller scale of like them having no idea they were about to launch like this like career for all of them of making these like trilogy movies and like having this excitement about it. And like for them it's just a love letter movie to a genre they are super into. But I think that'd be cool.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Okay, I got mine.
Go.
Out of Sight.
Ooh.
Final answer. Out of Sight. I would get to see pre-peak Soderbergh or what he's got 15 peaks. This kid's crazy. I love Soderbergh. Soderbergh's a genius, one of the real geniuses. And that movie is amazing. I get to kick it with 1997 J-Lo.
That's true.
George Clooney, me and George Clooney playing pickup basketball for the 4 seconds I can move.
Petting the pig.
Just all that stuff. Samuel Jackson. Spoiler alert, Samuel Jackson makes an appearance in there. All those. John Cheadle. I'm from Kansas City. Don Shields from Kansas City. We're sitting in between. He's got his do-rag on. I'm sitting talking to him. You know what I mean? There's so many people. Steve Zahn. Steve Zahn.
I am always amazed that he did not have he's doing fine for himself, but he should have been huge.
And that thing you do, he was.
I don't understand.
Well,
and he actually has the best song. Spoiler alert.
All My Lonely Dreams.
No, not All My Lonely Dreams. It's the Come On.
Come on. Yeah. The Fairmontage.
Yeah.
I've seen that movie a few times. Come on, pretty baby.
Yes, that is the best song in the movie.
It's a great song. That's
the jam.
It's not a great movie, but he's underrated how funny he is in Saving Silverman. Like he's with these like huge, like at the time Jason Bigg was like not a huge star, but he was like the star of the movie, whatever. And Jack Black, and then you've got Steve Zahn like right in the middle, but he has some of like the best. And I think he's one of those guys who, despite being funny and silly, is understated, and I think that's why he might not have broken out the way a lot of people did, because he's always like the second banana and everything. But I remember this is my favorite line in the whole movie is that the fact that I have a favorite line in Saving Silverman is dumb, but when he's like talking to Amanda Peet, and he's like, oh, we're in a similar, she's like a psychiatrist, and he's like, oh, I'm in a similar industry, and she's like, what is that? And he's like, oh, I'm pest and rodent control, and she's like, how is that similar? He's like, we both help people, and he's so earnest and so excited about it, and it's just a great delivery.
That's his quality, and he's the through line in Out of Sight. He keeps popping up to give information. Every time he sees J-Lo, she beats him up, she hurts him, she makes him rat on his friends, and it's just like, damn, J-Lo's like Batman to Steve Zahn in that movie. Every time she shows up.
He came to an open mic in Columbus, Ohio when I first was starting comedy, because they were filming like I think the movie Hush that he was in, it's like a based on a YA novel. They were filming it in Columbus, and the crew came out to the bar where our open mic was happening, and Steve Zahn told me that I was funny by the jukebox. So that's my favorite claim to fame.
What song was playing?
Oh, it was definitely. I think it was Hey Jealousy, because I think I played it. So.
There's a line in Saving Silverman that me and my best friend Michael in high school, we must have rewound, or maybe early years of college, and watched 100 times because it made us laugh so much. And it's just Jack Black being Jack Black. I think they're yelling at Amanda Peet, and they're just like, "We're gonna come back and get him," and they're like, "Yeah, and then Jack Black just goes, "Company, yeah!" It's just like, I don't know where that came from, but we thought it was the funniest thing we'd ever heard.
Those non sequiturs are the money, man.
Yeah.
Oh, and I left out two people. Wrapping this up, Michael Keaton. He was from Jackie Brown.
Yeah.
He's playing Ray Nicolette, Ray Nicolette. So maybe I could finagle some kind of Tarantino action, or at least like a little sliver of a napkin or something. No, anyway, but yeah, and Ving Rhames. Ving Rhames.
And Dennis Farina, too, right?
And Dennis Farina. Yeah. You know what I mean? Just like playing J-Lo's dad.
Yeah.
It's a fantastic movie. It's an indirect sequel. And Elmore Leonard had that time, like from Get Shorty and the other one, and Jackie Brown and all these movies coming out with his voice, and Out of Sight coming out with his voice interpreted through these luminary filmmakers. Oh, last but not least, Scott Frank, the screenwriter of Out of Sight. He could teach a screenwriting class.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So Michael Keaton's a good one, because I was going to say Beetlejuice would be a good set. Just because that is one of those ones where it's so gorgeous to walk around in, because so much of it is practical. And then you could also go and see like all of the stop motion and everything and all the people in their very, very uncomfortable makeup.
Yeah, I just changed mine, Labyrinth, because you can walk around the entire labyrinth.
Yeah.
That'd
Although,
be
would
good.
that destroy the magic?
I don't think it would. Everyone I've ever heard talk about working with the Muppets say that like within 10 minutes you forget there's puppets, they're puppeteers there, and they're just talking to the Muppets.
That's pretty cool.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
That's how I feel about Cucumber.
Yeah.
Like when Cucumber is on movie fights,
He's Cucumber.
we're 5 minutes into the show, and
he's
I am
real.
speaking to Cucumber. Well, I mean, he's real, but if Cucumber were let's say not.
I don't know why we would say this.
In a world where Cucumber is
Cucumber
not
popped
real.
up at like a fan meetup at SDCC, and I like got more excited about that than the fact that I was being greeted by fans of a thing that I do. It was the weirdest thing.
There's never a moment where I think that I am not speaking to Cucumber, sitting right there, looking into Cucumber's eyes.
And like so, the Labyrinth thing. I'm sorry, I cut you off.
Oh,
Go ahead.
no. Oh, please, no.
And you shake his hand too.
Yes.
You shake Cucumber's hand.
You show him respect.
Respect.
You call him Mr. Cucumber.
Look him in the eye like a man.
They call babe Mr. Cucumber.
All right, that seems like we're going to go.
I cut you off in the middle of your thing. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, we're good. We're going to end it on a laugh and on our dear friend, Mr. Cucumber. Thank y'all so much for watching. We have got videos up today. We've got the Honest Trailer trailer up for Masters of the Universe.
My apologies to Ryan, who keeps track of our views, because it's going to be such a drop-off this week and last week. I'm so sorry.
I will watch it a billion times to make up
I
for
wanted
it.
to do this movie forever, and they let me do it, and I'm so happy.
That's what happens. You do an Endgame, and you earn a Masters of the Universe.
Yes.
So go check that out. And as per usual, I don't know, maybe some of you still don't know, the commentaries are not up today because they're going to be up tomorrow, because we like to get some of your responses. I especially do on this one, because I feel like it's going to be a bunch of people who have not seen this movie before.
What?
It's going to be
Oh, man.
fantastic. All right, so for everyone here, where can everyone find you both?
You can find me on Twitter at Riley J. Silverman, and if you are in the LA area, next Friday, the 23rd, we're doing a live performance of my Doctor Who tabletop role-playing game at Geeky Tees in Burbank. We're raising money for our audio equipment for our second season, so come check that out. It's $10 at the door.
Awesome.
It's awesome.
Game of Rassilon is what it's called.
And you can check me out at Ed Greer Destroys on Twitter. I got a lot of people said stuff about yesterday's show, and I really appreciate that. They talked about the healthy discussion that we were able to have about a nuanced subject, and that type of love for all of us. I just want to give us all some props for that episode. You know what I mean? Just like being cool.
You guys were great. It was awesome. It was
Yeah,
really good.
it's like Patricia Arquette writing on a napkin. You're so cool. But yeah, and Nerd Goat Podcast, please check it out at Nerd Goat Podcast. We had Derek Robertson, co-creator of The Boys, on. We're gonna have Hector Navarro of El Rey on this week. You know, we've had Greg Alba, champion. Champion level movie fighter, never
He
quite a
is
champion
indeed.
because the champ was smacking us all up. So yeah, you know, we've had a nice run of episodes, and they're only getting better. And we're people have asked, like, how can you support me? Listen to Nerd Goat, rate it, review it, do the
Perfect.
Patreon thing, please.
All right, and so we're going to go ahead and head out. And Ryan says, mention Donkey. My generation deserves to be represented. Donkey. Bye.
Don't get.